at the Ohio Department of Education. I hope everybody's doing well and is enjoying some semblance of a summer. If it's anything like me, my morning, I'm running kids to numerous practices and trying to stay off Facebook just because I can't deal with all the chatter about the beginning of the school year. But obviously we're in a unique situation, and with the governor's guidance last week, and the department had been working on some reset and restart information. We've got some tools that we put in place, which is sort of the purpose of today's meeting. We know that in these incredibly unique circumstances and how essentially the last quarter of the last school year played out, that data is more important than ever, and trying to have information about where students are when school starts back up, whatever school is going to look like, and it's probably going to look at different ways in different places, is so important. And so the department has been trying to put some different tools together to help educators when school starts back up, to sort of understand where they were in terms of the enacted curriculum, to try to provide some information about where students are. And so this really fits into the wheelhouse of the work that the RDLs do. And so we wanted to share some of these tools today.
I was just trying to get on Microsoft
familiar with them. I know that some regional data leads provided some early feedback.
Changed my app.
So anyway, we're going to share some of these, take some questions, and we are continuing to work on some additional things too that we won't get into today. But for example, we are working with our AIR, our Cambium, our test provider, to build some additional assessment tools that will be within the online system. So stay tuned for some more information on those. But we are very excited to share some of the things we put together today. And so thank you for being here. And I believe I'm going to turn it over to Brian. Are you first up?
Let me unmute myself first before I start talking. Yes, good morning.
Okay.
So myself and Elizabeth Bridges are going to be kind of giving you a quick overview. I'm going to share my screen.
I hope to yeah. Yep.
And we got some other people talking. We may want to make sure that you're on mute, just so that it doesn't interfere with the conversation that's going on. So let me share a screen that will have the presentation on it. The presentation was also shared with everybody, I believe. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes, we've got it.
Okay, great. So with that, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let Elizabeth introduce herself, and we'll get started with this. So I am Brian Roget. I am an associate director in the Office of Learning and Instructional Strategies, and help oversee a lot of the standards work, as well as model curricula and other aspects around the learning standards. Elizabeth.
My name's Elizabeth Bridges, and I'm an ELA content specialist on the assessment development team. I see the 3 through 6 assessments and provide assistance to higher grades, and have had a hand in the development of some of these tools. Members from English Language Arts and Mathematics teams in the Office of Learning and Instructional Strategies and the Office of Assessment have been pulling together and developing materials that can be made available to classroom teachers, administrators, and districts for the 2020-2021 school year. The result of that work in my area is the English Language Arts Toolkit, and in Brian's, the Mathematics Toolkit. The toolkit includes resources for grades 3 through high school. Teachers right now are scrambling for materials that will help them as they build curriculum and plans for reopening in the fall, regardless of how that restart might look. These resources are designed to help. The resources in the toolkit include teacher and student materials. The teacher materials are designed to provide educators with information about this year's instruction. It identifies what assessment materials are available to them and in what forms. The student materials are redesigned from what we have available on the testing portal. They are user-friendly for classroom teachers to use as a regular part of their daily instruction.
So for today's presentation, we have taken what is in the Student Readiness Toolkit and kind of organized it into these 5 areas of some introductory information, analysis resources, support resources, standards and model curricula, and assessment resources. And we'll be going through these different areas and talking about those materials that are in each section.
In this first section, we will share information about the overview document and the PowerPoint that can be used to guide educators through the toolkit. Next slide, Brian.
It should be there.
The Toolkit Overview document provides teachers with a detailed roadmap of the materials that are included. All Toolkit materials were sent out to some of the RDLs for public comment and feedback. Most of the reviews from this group were strong. Their suggestions for improvement were addressed and clarified in the Toolkit Overview document. These additions should help clarify any misunderstandings. Both mathematics and English language arts have voice-over PowerPoints that explain in detail the information included in the toolkit. The PowerPoint can be found on each of the content-specific pages of the ODE website. Teachers and district personnel are not required to use the toolkit. This is a clarification that initial reviewers of the toolkit requested. It includes materials that districts may want to include in their planning for next year. The hope is that the toolkit will help teachers identify instructional gaps from this school year and provide them with materials that can address those gaps.
So for mathematics, we also have some introductory materials that have been made available, and each year as we enter into school year, I mean, we start planning. We start planning for the engagement of mathematics and promote the development of students early on in the spring and on into the school year. This tool and this overguide is to help review some of those goals of instruction that are typically there, compare what has gone on with what was in the standards, as well as pre-assess them and looking for that information. We also, within mathematics and English language arts, have a presentation that is a voiceover presentation that is available for each for people to use to help understand what materials are in the toolkit. With the this next area, with the analysis resources, we have both a gap analysis for each of the content areas for mathematics and English language arts, as well as some information around preparing for instruction, some guiding questions in the areas of mathematics. So the idea of the gap analysis is to create this record of what learning opportunities took place. And at this point, we're looking at what opportunities took place this last year during the 2019 and 2020 school year. We know that a lot of things were able to be covered and addressed, and that those learning opportunities took place prior to the mandatory closures of the school buildings. And so what took place before, but then also what took place, what instruction was received or that was addressed during that shutdown through multiple means. And it will allow for some different, allow for that collection and ideas so that there can be some sharing between the current, this last year's teacher and the teacher that will have those students in the following year.
This is what the gap analysis tool looks like for English language arts. The mathematical one mirrors this. There's a spreadsheet for each grade level, which lists the ELA strand, topic, standard number, like RL 7.4, and the full text of the standard. Additionally, the gap analysis tool includes columns to the right that are titled Taught Prior to Remote Learning, taught during remote learning, and comments. Teachers can use the tool to identify what and how instruction occurred during this past school year. This is not a tool to be a report on individual students. It's a tool to indicate what was taught to an entire class. The gap analysis should help teachers determine what standards were addressed in the previous year and what skills students are bringing with them when they return to school in the fall.
As Elizabeth mentioned, the mathematics gap analysis also exists for K-8 and high school. And the high school, you would see in the that second column there where it says high school course would be identified the course that the standard may be addressed in either algebra or geometry or so that identifies that high school course. Again, it has that taught prior to remote learning, taught during remote learning, and then the comments, which would allow you to put all different types of comments in there and provide that information for the following year teacher.
In this next section, we'll address the ELA and math learning progressions and the critical areas of focus in math. The learning progressions, especially those for ELA, are found in the model curriculum, and they provide grade level teachers with information about what students should have learned the previous year and what will be expected of them during the next grade level. Learning progressions can be used to help identify instructional gaps that may have occurred as the result of the COVID shutdown.
For mathematics, we also have learning progressions within our model curriculum, but we also have some documents that have been created that show the progression of standards across different domains. And so, as you see here in this example, this shows the progression of operations and algebraic thinking across kindergarten through grade 5. You can see how different areas build and progress, and by using this along with the model curriculum and other resources, you can identify what prior knowledge should build into something that you're using now. So you can see, was that standard addressed in that previous year? Was it addressed during remote, and look at then what needs to be connected to and understandings of that the mathematics that needs to those foundational and underpinning mathematics that will lead to greater understanding. Additionally, in mathematics, one of the things that the mathematics area has is what we call the critical areas of focus. These documents are grades for each grades in at K-8 as well as high school. They identify big ideas or themes that pull together the standards. So you may see that, at a specific grade, that multiplication and division is a major theme at a specific grade level, like at 4th grade. And so we pull together, and you can see all the standards that come together, so that as you're thinking about instruction, how do you pull together the standards? How do you pull together and build that foundational knowledge? What foundational knowledge? So the idea of creating rather than so much than essential understandings, but those big ideas of pulling standards together. This, along with the gap analysis and the learning progression, gives a bigger picture that can maximize then that learning for all students. In this next area, we'll be talking a little bit more about we always want to bring it back to what is it that is the essential piece, and that's the learning standards accompanied with the model curricula, and for mathematics, the standards for mathematical practice. This is a quick example of what the model curriculum for English language arts is, and the different components. You have those content elaborations that that explain and clarify and support the understanding of the learning standards for English language arts. You have those progressions, which Elizabeth mentioned a minute ago, and how those move forward. The instructional supports that provide additional information, that those resources and information that will give further clarity and support, specifically around educational technology, diverse learning, and those career connections, and helping with early learning as well. And then we have the instructional strategies and resources that accompany the model curricula. For mathematics, we have a lot of those same things. The one component that we identify here that would help with the whole idea is connecting within the expectations for learning. It also shows for a specific standard those things that are either what came before and what came after, and that kind of that progression as well, and gives a little bit more detail of what is it that a student can do and what can they know and do at a specific grade around a specific set of standards.
In this next section, I'll be talking about assessment resources that are available to teachers to help identify student learning. This tool is specific to English language arts. The passage text sets, say that 3 times fast. The passage text sets are specific to grade level and text type, literary or informational, and includes the items that are associated with that set. The passage text sets include a single passage set with items, which is unlike what is currently available on the website. The text sets include all released reading and writing items from spring of 2016 through spring of 2019 for grades 3 through high school. This material is already on Ohio's testing portal. It has been reformatted, organized by genre, and is in a printable format, which makes it easy to use. A link to the scoring guide is provided on the cover of each passage text set, giving teachers the ability to determine accuracy of student responses. Annotations for each of the responses are also included in the scoring document. Teachers can use these to help students clarify misunderstandings about what is expected of each item. Beginning with the released items from 2019, depth of knowledge designations are included in the scoring guides. Teachers are directed to the depth of knowledge information that can be found on the ELA webpage, which explains the expectations at each level. Some of the passage text sets include a writing prompt, which requires a multi-paragraph response. The scoring guide for the writing items include the writing rubric, samples of student responses, and an annotation for each response that explains the credit earned. These passage text sets can be a useful tool for teachers to help determine gaps that should be addressed with instruction. They're available as PDFs, so they can be easily printed for classroom use or sent electronically for remote use, in case that is the format we are in. Next slide.
Yes.
Thank you. The ELA passage tracker tools are also new resources that are grade-specific spreadsheets that identify the passage set by text type, literary or informational. The tracker identifies the content standards that are associated by the items in each of the passage text sets. So as you can see here, Don't Count Your Chickens, a grade 7 passage, has associated with it items that represent standard 2, 3, 4, 6, and language 5. This is a tool for teachers to use as a convenient means of tracking the type of reading passages with which students may struggle, as well as the related skills the students may need to work on that are based on the standards. It can also show teachers the students who have mastered the skill and are ready for enrichment. The passage trackers have some passage text sets that are highlighted in yellow to show which are also included on the full-length sample tests. The purpose for using the passage text sets and the purpose for using the sample test would vary, so it's not recommended that you use both the text sets and sample test if you do not want students exposed to the passages and items prior to using one tool or another.
For mathematics, we have gone through, our consultants have worked to pull together the assessments of released item assessments, also for grades 3 through 8, and the algebra test, and coded them and identified them and pulled them together around both reporting categories as well as the critical areas of focus, so that you can see where the different things happen. There are two sets of pieces. There's a student resource that has the test questions just grouped together by those areas, where the math one will have it grouped together but have the additional information and the identification of both the reporting area and the critical areas of focus. And the scoring information is provided in teacher information as well.
These assessment literacy tools may give teachers a foundational understanding of several assessment tools that can be used in the classroom. Many of our stakeholders have given us extremely positive feedback on the test specifications and noted that they provide information that has helped them improve their classroom assessments. They are also particularly fond of the item development sequence document available on the website, which provides step-by-step information on how an item comes to be on an assessment from its inception to its inclusion on a test. Each of these are hot linked so that teachers can go directly to them if they need this information. These are the members of the English Language Arts team on both the content and assessment sides of the office. Please feel free to contact any of us with questions about the Reset Restart resources.
And these are the consultants for the mathematics team, and you can also contact them regarding any of the information within this student readiness toolkit and within the Reset Restart process. In following up, I want to take us to the website here in a minute and just kind of look through, and so you can actually see where this is at and the information that is there. I would say that as districts and others use this information, they may be able to use different components of it. They may incorporate it with other things that they have at their readiness and that they use already at the district level. This is, again, to enhance and to try to provide information and tools that districts can use to get a better sense of where students are at as a whole, and where they can progress and where they can make sure that we move students forward from where we're at and moving them forward to keep them learning and developing in a correct way. So I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna stop sharing this screen and switch to another screen here. So hopefully you can see the Reset and Restart page, and within that is the Student Readiness Toolkit. So if you go into from the home page and go into Reset and Restart, and then you can identify the Student Readiness Toolkit. But in this Student Readiness Toolkit, you will see the beginning of it and what kind of gives you an overview of what is the Student Readiness Toolkit and how should the toolkit be used. And there are several different identifications down through there. When we get down to it, though, there are 3 components of this toolkit that we kind of have gone over. One is the English Language Arts Toolkit, the other is the Mathematics Toolkit, and then the Assessment Literacy Tools. And so as we go down, and you will see you have starting out for English Language Arts, you just have those introductory materials, those first 2. It's the PowerPoint and the overview document, along with then we get into the gap analysis, the vertical alignment and learning progressions, as well as the, as you can see, they are kind of in that same order as we progress through those different documents. For mathematics, then follows that within the PowerPoint and the voiceover PowerPoint, as well as the preparing for instruction. This preparing for instruction document is kind of some guiding questions that can help you. Then we have the learning progressions for K-8 and the critical areas of focus, as well as the model curriculum, and then the standards for mathematical practice. The assessments there are grades 3 through 8, and for the high school for both the student and the teacher. Then we work down through this document into the assessment literacy tools, including a video that describes how the state tests are built and those different documents that Elizabeth walked through. So at this point, I will stop sharing. We can come back to the full group and see what questions you have.
Hi, Brian and Elizabeth. Thank you for your work. This is Carrie Wood. I was just wondering, when I was looking at the gap analysis tool, which is going to be a fantastic organization tool, not only for this purpose, for lots of purposes in the future. So I'm so excited, just like my obsession with Post-it notes. A well-framed out document like that is so valuable in many ways. But up at the header, it says taught. Did you get any feedback from teachers that you said that either supported or gave you some questions about it, to note the meaning of taught versus like the one and done versus just addressed? Is that what the comment section would be for?
The comment section is for whatever teachers want to include in it. And we didn't, although we understand that whole idea, taught certainly doesn't mean that students mastered it, which is a limitation of the document. It's difficult at best to be able to say what students mastered and what they didn't.
Sure. So do you just suggest maybe adding that as part of your conversation with the document is, let's go over, your definition of taught, what does that mean? And
or just, even saying things like introduced in the comments section, so that the following year teacher has an understanding that this wasn't something that they spent a lot of time on.
Thank you for that clarification.
Brian, this is Marianne. Somebody had put in the chat during the presentation, has there been any thought given to integrating the Ohio Learning Standards Extended with the learning progressions?
There has been conversation from time to time about that, and trying to look at, where can some of those aspects be brought into. We know that some of those foundational development through the extended may help some groups of students who to build that. We've had that conversation. At this point, we have not done that, but it is something that conversation has taken place.
Great. We've got another one that came into the chat. Are the assessments able to be integrated into LMS, for example, Google Classroom?
not understanding in what it would take to merge that into that. I don't know whether those can they be used and put into something like that. There's nothing that prohibits them because they are released items. So there's nothing that would prohibit a district from incorporating those into something. How easily they would flow in right now, they're in, I believe, PDF. So it would depend on whether those could be pulled in or not.
So I think they'd work with Google Classroom. I don't know about LMS.
Okay. Another thing that came in is, what are your recommendations as to where teachers should start in terms of using the tool?
You know, because this tool is to be used in conjunction with whatever districts are planning, it's hard to say where to start. Because there are multiple resources, I think that that's going to be up to what the district planning is. Certainly, I would think that the gap analysis tool would be extremely helpful at the beginning of the year, but that may not be what districts recommend. So because we're local controlled, we can't say specifically what you should start with.
Yeah, I would agree. And with the mathematics and English language arts, as you think about it, depending on what you've already done as a district, you may pull in the different resources at different points. So if you've already done something of your own that's like a gap analysis, you may not use our gap analysis. You may use and say, okay, let's take what we've done and how can we then look at those other components, the progressions and other things to say, okay, here are the standards that we know weren't addressed fully or completely in a specific year. And we think through maybe the critical areas of mathematics, how can we group these together and what foundational knowledge am I going to have to make sure students have before I move into the next year's content? And so that, thinking through that as
Marianne, were there additional questions? I think Brian is frozen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Brian froze. I thought he might come back for a second. No, that was all that was in the chat. Are there live questions from people? You can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, this is Krista Maxon from ODHE, and I'm wondering if there's any way to add a column or something about the percent of students that demonstrated mastery, or at least demonstrated that they learned those concepts, because I think it's important to know what the students learned as opposed to what was covered.
The gap analysis is a spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. So adding columns to it is certainly something that teachers can do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got bumped out of the meeting and had to get back in, so I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden,
you look good frozen, Brian.
Yeah. Other questions for Brian or Elizabeth?
One comment I would say is, as you use these resources and tools, please share how you're using them with each other and with us, because we would like to be able to say, if we know somebody's thinking about it and they're having questions about, well, how did I use this resource? How did I use the gap analysis with this, with the learning progressions, with one of the assessments, to get information and to guide what instruction should be going on, as we get other people asking us questions, and we can say, oh, we know that this district's already done that. Maybe contact them, or if we have some examples, that would help us make sure that we can, encourage and help other districts as they go through and use any of these resources and tools.
I'd also encourage you to keep an eye on the website because new things will be added as they become available. Like Brian said, we are working with Cambium on some diagnostic type of assessments that will be helpful, that are going to be machine scored just like the regular assessments are. So it will be really helpful for teachers so that they can pattern what they are doing after the Ohio assessments.
Great. We had another question come into the chat. How is the feedback form being used to update or revise the materials? And can this form stay up to date so that folks can continue to provide feedback as they are using the materials? And then I guess a corollary, is there a way to send out notices to this group, to the RDL network, when things are added?
Let me deal with the second question first, probably. With the sending out, one of the things I think that we would be doing is if you are part of either the mathematics and or the ELA Gov delivery system, that would be one way that we would be communicating when things are going out. But we can try to work with Mary Ann and others to make sure that if we send something out around mathematics, that make sure that that message also gets through any Gov delivery or any message that comes to this group specifically. So we can try to make sure that takes place. The feedback form, yeah, I'll have to double check on that. I'm trying to think again who, I'm trying to remember who manages, whether that's our office that managed that feedback form or whether it was another office that managed. And maybe if Allie is on here, if she remembers whether that was us or her. I want to say it was us, but I will. But if it is, yes, we can try to. We will work on keeping that.
The question, Brian? Sorry.
Yeah, with the feedback, the question was on the feedback form, and keeping it up to date and revised so that they can provide feedback related to this, to the Readiness Toolkit. Was that? I was trying to remember if that was was that what our office did?
I think it came out of assessment, actually.
Okay. So we'll have to see. We'll figure out who has maintains control of that and try to make sure that we keep that updated, available.
Great.
All right, again, that was everything I had in the chat. Is there any other question for Brian or Elizabeth?
Mary Ann, this is Bob Crabtree. I was going to type it in, but I'm a slow typist, so I'll ask it.
Sure.
I've kind of heard by participating in regional network meetings with math department, heard some suggestions, and I'm curious, is it different between math and reading? And my question was, is there any suggestion or guidance in the documents to, let's say, a 5th grade teacher who has received either a gap tool from the previous grade level, or they've used the pre-assessment for their grade level, as to whether they should feel or accept a need to go back and reteach any of the content from the previous grade level? Is there a difference in the math and reading, or are they similar in that in terms of those guidance or suggestions?
Thank you, Bob. Brian or Elizabeth, did you get that?
Yeah, I think there's probably some similarities. There may be some aspects because with mathematics, you have those critical areas of focus and you have those ideas of just-in-time reteaching. So not going back and taking the first 6 weeks to reteach everything that maybe didn't get caught, but to teach it as needed in that just-in-time or that sustained professional development, which I think is probably very similar to the way English Language Arts would say it.
Yeah.
But how they get to that point may be slightly different. So, So I think that in that sense, yes, they are very similar. Does that answer your question?
Great. I think you're on mute, Bob.
Yeah, I was thinking. I guess
I was gonna say he's.
Is there something in the tools that kind of addresses that question, or, and that's kind of what I was asking.
Yeah.
You throw the tool out, then it's left to the person to decide how it's used. And so I was just wondering, is there guidance around that question?
I know for the mathematics in that preparing for instruction document, we have a bunch of questions that kind of lead a group of teachers through about thinking about that and how to go about what instruction needs to take place. And so I would say, yes, that's in that document.
I would agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We had another question come into the chat. In the gap analysis, why was there no column for not taught? So to indicate that a standard just wasn't covered in the prior year.
You know, that column was there, and it based on some feedback that we got, we were told that it should be removed. So I guess you just leave it blank if it has not been taught at all.
Thank you. So that was, again, everything that I had. I think we are to the point where I think we've sufficiently answered everybody's questions.
And if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Elizabeth or any of the ODE staff that we put in the presentation and ask the questions. You know, because we want to make sure that, you know, we answer any questions that you have around this.
Thank you.
Marianne,
Chris or Allie, was there anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm having some tech issues, so you can't see me. I guess I can just sort of close it off. I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate everybody's time today. We think we've put together some tools that are meeting some very specific needs that are out there right now. And we hope that we're doing that, but we also recognize that, you know, these are early iterations of these things, and we want your feedback. And if there are things that we aren't doing, we want to hear that, because I mean, our goal here is to put tools into people's hands, and the folks on this network are a key part of that. So the one question about, you know, like making sure that this network hears about things, this is in fact our intention, to make sure that you guys are out in front of this and that we're getting feedback from you. And so we're completely committed to that and hope that you find these valuable. As this plays out, let us know, even if it's not in a specific form. If there are things, you know how to get a hold of any number of us, so let us know. And again, we want to continue to build tools. We sort of alluded to it a few times in here, but we also think that some of the assessment items that we're going to put together in the Cambium system are really going to add a lot of functionality too. So stay tuned on that as we have some more information, hopefully in the coming weeks, on what that will look like. But we hope this is meeting a need out there. So let us know. And I really appreciate everybody's time this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. We did record this, and I'll figure out how to get this posted, and we'll get a link out for those of you that want to either rewatch it and or weren't able to join for the whole thing. So thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody. Stay cool.
Bye.
Bye.